The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to my wife Karen and 17-year-old Ashley tear me apart in the living room. "He's pathetic, Mom. Always trying so hard to be my dad when we both know he'll never be anything more than your second choice." Ashley's voice dripped with teenage venom. Karen laughed. Actually laughed. "You're right, sweetheart. John tries, but let's be honest. He's just a mechanic. Liam understands what I need. What we both need." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I pressed my back against the wall, my work shirt still reeking of motor oil and sweat. 10 years. 10 goddamn years I'd been raising Ashley since she was 7, and this is what I got for it. "Does John even know about you and Officer Liam?" Ashley giggled like she was discussing some high school gossip instead of my marriage falling apart. "What John doesn't know won't hurt him. Besides, he's too busy under some car hood to notice what's happening in his own house." My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to storm in there and confront them both, but something held me back. Maybe it was the cold calculation that was already forming in my mind. Maybe it was the realization that I'd been the fool in this equation for far too long. I backed away slowly, my work boots silent on the hardwood floors I'd installed myself 3 years ago. Everything in this house, from the crown molding to the granite countertops, I'd either built or paid for. And they thought I was just some dumb grease monkey who didn't deserve respect. The garage was my sanctuary. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, staring at the workbench where I'd taught Ashley how to change a tire when she was 12. She'd hugged me that day, called me the best stepdad ever. Now she was in there plotting with her mother like I was the enemy. My phone buzzed. A text from Karen. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." Working late? Right. I knew exactly what kind of work she was doing, and it wasn't selling real estate. I fired up my laptop and did what any suspicious husband would do. I started digging. Karen wasn't as smart as she thought she was. She used the same password for everything. Ashley 2006, the year I'd married her and became a father to her daughter. Her email was a gold mine. Hotel reservations, romantic texts with Officer Liam Patterson, the golden boy of our small-town police force. The same guy who'd pulled me over for speeding last month and lectured me about being a better role model. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. John's working late at the shop as usual. He has no idea what he's missing." Karen's text was time-stamped 2 hours ago. What he's missing. Like I was some absent husband instead of the guy who worked 60-hour weeks to pay for Ashley's car, her clothes, her college fund, and Karen's shopping addiction. I scrolled through more messages. They'd been at this for months. The Riverside Motel, Tuesday and Thursday nights. Sometimes weekend afternoons when I was at the shop doing inventory. My phone rang. Barb from the Blue Tap. "Johnny, you okay? You sound weird in your voicemail." I'd called her without remembering. "Yeah, just having one of those days." "Come down here. First beer's on me." The Blue Tap was exactly what you'd expect from a dive bar in a dying factory town. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and the kind of regulars who'd been drinking there since before I was born. But Barb kept it clean, and she had a way of making everyone feel like family. "You look like hell," she said, sliding a Budweiser across the scarred wooden bar. "Feel worse." I took a long drink. "Barb, what do you hear about Karen and that cop, Patterson?" Her expression shifted. In a town of 8,000 people, Barb knew everything worth knowing. "Johnny, just tell me." She sighed and leaned against the bar. "They're not exactly subtle. Half the town's talking about it. I'm sorry, honey. I thought you knew." Half the town. While I was working my ass off, everyone was whispering behind my back about my cheating wife and her cop boyfriend. "How long?" 6 months, maybe more. "Look, Johnny, I've known you since high school, You deserve better than this. I finished my beer in silence. 6 months. All those nights Karen claimed she was showing houses to out-of-town clients. All those times Ashley rolled her eyes when I tried to have a conversation with her. They'd been laughing at me for half a year. Another one? Barb asked. No, I've got work to do. I drove to the Riverside Motel, a rundown place on the edge of town where truckers and cheating spouses conducted their business. Sure enough, Karen's silver Honda was parked next to a police cruiser. Room 237. I sat in my truck for an hour, watching. At 11:30 they emerged, Liam in his uniform, Karen straightening her skirt. He kissed her right there in the parking lot like they were some kind of fairy tale couple instead of two people destroying a family. They drove off in separate directions. I waited another 10 minutes, then walked to the office. The night clerk was a kid, maybe 19, with acne scars and dead eyes. Help you? Yeah, I think my wife left her earrings in 237. Karen Mitchell, she was here with Officer Patterson. The kid's eyes widened. I can't really... I slid a 20 across the counter. Just need to check real quick. Money talked, even to minimum wage motel clerks. He handed me a key card. Room 237 smelled like cheap air freshener and guilt. I wasn't looking for evidence, I already had plenty. I was looking for something else. Something that would hurt them the way they'd hurt me. I found it on the nightstand. Liam's backup service weapon. A small .38 revolver he'd apparently forgotten in his rush to get dressed. Police officers weren't supposed to leave their weapons lying around, especially not in motel rooms during extramarital affairs. I didn't touch it. Instead, I took several photos with my phone, making sure the room number was visible in the background. Then I called it in. 911, what's your emergency? I'd like to report an unsecured police weapon at the Riverside Motel, room 237. I hung up and drove home, arriving just as Karen was pulling into the driveway. She walked in like nothing had happened, kissing my cheek with lips that had been on another man an hour earlier. How was work? I asked. Exhausting. Showed 3 houses to this demanding couple from Pittsburgh. They want everything perfect. She was good at lying. I'd give her that. That's too bad. Maybe tomorrow will be better. She smiled and headed upstairs. I'm taking a shower. Long day. I sat in my recliner, listening to the water run, and planned my next move. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they were about to learn that the dumb mechanic knew how to play too. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Local police officer under investigation for weapons violation. Game on. The next morning brought chaos. Karen's phone was buzzing non-stop by 7 a.m., and she was pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. What's wrong? I asked, buttering my toast with practiced innocence. Liam's in trouble. Someone reported his service weapon missing, and now Internal Affairs is investigating. She was chewing her bottom lip, a tell she'd had since I'd known her. That's terrible. How does someone lose a police weapon? Ashley wandered downstairs in her pajamas, already scrolling through her phone. Mom, everyone's talking about Officer Patterson on social media. They're saying he might get fired. I watched Karen's face go pale. If Liam lost his job, their little fantasy of running away together would hit a major snag. Unemployed cops didn't make good sugar daddies. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, I said. These things usually work themselves out. Karen shot me a look I couldn't quite read. Suspicion? Fear? How would you know? Just seems like the kind of bureaucratic nonsense that gets blown out of proportion. I finished my coffee and grabbed my keys. Speaking of work, I've got a transmission to rebuild. See you tonight. I kissed her forehead, the same way I had every morning for 10 years. But now it felt different. Now it was part of the performance. At the shop, I called my lawyer, Pete Kowalski. We'd gone to high school together, and he'd handled the paperwork when I bought the garage 5 years ago. Johnny, what can I do for you? Hypothetically, Pete, if someone wanted to protect their assets in a divorce, what would be the best approach? There was a pause. This hypothetical person wouldn't be you, would it? Just asking for a friend. Right. Well, your friend should know that Michigan is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still impact property division and alimony. If your friend has documentation of infidelity, it could be very helpful. What kind of documentation? Photos, emails, witness testimony, hotel receipts, phone records. The more evidence, the better. I thanked Pete and hung up. Then I got to work, both on the transmission and on gathering evidence. Karen's email password got me access to her credit card statements. The Riverside Motel appeared 14 times in the last 3 months. Always the same dates, always the same amount. But I needed more than financial records. I needed something that would destroy them both publicly, the way they'd humiliated me privately. The opportunity came that afternoon. Ashley posted a TikTok video that made my blood boil. She was in her bedroom, lip-syncing to some song about fake people, but the caption read, "When your stepdad thinks he's your real dad, but everyone knows he's just the ATM, sorry not sorry, stepdad problems." The video already had 50 likes and a dozen comments from her friends, all laughing at my expense. One comment stood out. "At least your mom found a real man now." So the kids knew too. Perfect. I screenshot everything and added it to my growing file of evidence. Then I did something I'd never done before. I went through Ashley's room. I wasn't proud of it, but I was past caring about privacy. In her desk drawer, I found a notebook she used as a diary. Most of it was typical teenage drama, but several entries mentioned Mom's boyfriend and how excited Ashley was about finally getting rid of John. One entry, dated 2 weeks ago, made my hands shake. Mom says once she divorces John, we'll move in with Liam and his house is way nicer. Plus, he actually has a real job, not just fixing cars. I can't wait to tell John he's not my dad anymore. Maybe then he'll stop trying so hard. I photographed the relevant pages and put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Then I sat on Ashley's bed, the bed I'd assembled when she was 8, and felt something inside me break. Not my heart. That had broken last night listening to them mock me. This was something deeper. This was the death of the man who'd tried to be a good husband and father, and the birth of someone much colder. That evening, Karen was distracted during dinner. She kept checking her phone and barely touched her food. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stuff. The Patterson situation has everyone at the office worried. He was going to help me with a security consultation for one of my commercial properties." More lies. Karen sold residential real estate, mostly starter homes and rentals. She'd never had a commercial property in her life. Ashley was equally distracted, probably planning her next social media attack on me. Fine. Let them both live in their fantasy world a little longer. After dinner, I announced I was going to the Blue Tap for a beer. Karen barely looked up from her phone. "Don't stay out too late," she said absently. "Wouldn't dream of it." The bar was busier than usual for a Wednesday night. Word about Liam's investigation had spread, and everyone wanted to discuss it. I nursed a beer and listened to the gossip. "Always thought that Patterson kid was too good to be true," said Red Morrison, a retired factory worker who'd been coming to the Blue Tap since before I was born. "Heard he was carrying on with some married woman," added Janet Kowalski, Pete's wife. "You know how these small-town cops get. Think they're above the rules." Barb caught my eye and nodded toward the back booth. I followed her over. "You look different tonight," she said quietly. Calmer. "Just accepting reality." "Which reality is that?" "That I've been playing defense for 10 years when I should have been playing offense." She studied my face. "Johnny, whatever you're planning, be smart about it. Don't give them ammunition to use against you." "I'm always smart, Barb. That's what they never understood." I finished my beer and headed home, but not before making one more stop. The Riverside Motel parking lot was empty, except for a few long-haul trucks. I parked across the street and waited. At 10:15, Liam's personal car pulled in. A blue Camaro he'd bought to compensate for something, probably. 5 minutes later, Karen's Honda arrived. They were creatures of habit, these two. Same motel, same time, same arrogant assumption that no one would notice or care. I drove home and was in bed, pretending to sleep, when Karen slipped in at midnight. She showered again, washing off the evidence of her betrayal, then climbed into bed next to me. "John?" she whispered. I kept my breathing steady, feigning sleep. "I know you're awake." I rolled over to face her. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Do you ever think about what you want from life? Like, really want?" It was such a loaded question coming from her that I almost laughed. I thought I had what I wanted: a family, a business, a home. But what if you could have more? More what? She was quiet for a long moment. "Never mind. It's late." She rolled away from me, and within minutes her breathing evened out. But I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and finalizing my plans. They wanted more? I'd give them more than they ever bargained for. The next morning, I made my first real move. I called the bank and moved half our joint savings into a personal account I'd opened years ago for business expenses. Perfectly legal, since both our names were on the original account. Then I called Ashley's school and informed them that, effective immediately, I would no longer be responsible for any expenses related to her education, including the monthly payment plan for her senior trip to Europe. "But Mr. Mitchell," the secretary said, "you're listed as the primary contact for financial matters." That was a mistake. Karen Mitchell is Ashley's mother and sole guardian. Any bills should go directly to her. It was a small move, but it would send a message. And it was perfectly legal, since I'd never formally adopted Ashley. I was just the stepfather who'd been paying for everything out of the goodness of my heart. My phone rang an hour later. Karen, furious. "What the hell did you do?" "I'm not sure what you mean." "The school called. They said you're not paying for Ashley's trip anymore." "That's right. I figured since I'm not her real father, it wasn't my responsibility." There was dead silence on the other end. "Where is this coming from, John?" "Just reevaluating my priorities. Like you said last night, thinking about what I really want from life. We need to talk. We're talking now. In person. Tonight." "Can't tonight. I'm having dinner with Pete Kowalski and his wife, but we can talk this weekend." I hung up before she could respond. Let her stew on that for a few days. Let her wonder what Pete and I were discussing. Because by this weekend, I'd be ready to show Karen and Ashley exactly what happened when they pushed the wrong man too far. The game was just beginning. Friday night came faster than I expected. I'd spent the week gathering evidence and making preparations, but I still wasn't ready for the nuclear explosion that was about to happen in my living room. Karen was waiting for me when I got home from the shop, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of her. Ashley was there too, arms crossed, looking like she was ready for battle. "We need to talk," Karen said without preamble. I figured. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat down across from them. "What's on your mind?" "Don't play dumb, John. The school payments, the bank account, meeting with Pete Kowalski. What's your game?" I took a long drink of beer, studying both their faces. Karen was trying to look confident, but I could see the fear underneath. Ashley just looked angry, which was her default expression these days. "No game, just making some adjustments." "Adjustments to what?" "To how I see my role in this family." Ashley leaned forward. "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked at her directly for the first time in days. "It means I heard your conversation with your mother the other night. The one where you both made it very clear that I'm not your father and never will be." Karen's face went white. "John, you don't understand the context." "Oh, I understand perfectly. I also understand that you've been screwing Liam Patterson for the last 6 months, While I've been working 60-hour weeks to pay for this house, Ashley's car, and your shopping addiction. Ashley's mouth fell open. Karen looked like she'd been slapped. How dare you? Karen started. How dare I what? Tell the truth? You want to know what I found out this week? I pulled out my phone and started reading. Riverside Motel, 14 visits in 3 months. Hotel receipts charged to the credit card I pay for. Text messages talking about what a fool I am. Ashley's diary entries about how excited she is to get rid of me. You went through my diary? Ashley shrieked. Your diary that I indirectly paid for, in the house that I pay for, talking about destroying the family that I've supported for 10 years? Yeah, I read it. Karen was scrambling now. John, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. Counseling? I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. You want to go to counseling to work on our marriage while you're having an affair with a cop? That's rich. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. And you know what the best part is? Half the town already knows. Barb knew. The Kowalskis knew. Probably everyone except the idiot husband working under car hoods all day. Ashley stood up, her face red with anger. You know what? Good. I'm glad you know. You're not my dad, and you never will be. My real dad was 10 times the man you'll ever be. That hit harder than I expected. Ashley's biological father had died in a car accident when she was 6. I'd spent 11 years trying to honor his memory while being the father she needed. Your real dad, I said quietly, would be ashamed of the person you've become. Ashley gasped like I'd struck her. Karen shot to her feet. Don't you dare bring David into this. Why not? I've spent 11 years trying to live up to his memory, trying to be the father Ashley needed, and this is what I get for it? Mockery? Betrayal? A stepdaughter who posts TikTok videos calling me an ATM? That was just... She didn't mean... She meant every word, and so did you when you told your boyfriend that I was too stupid to notice what was happening in my own house. The room fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Karen and Ashley looked at each other, probably wondering how much I actually knew. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm filing for divorce. I'm keeping the house, the business, and everything I've built. You two can figure out your own living arrangements. You can't do that, Karen said. Michigan is a no-fault state. I'm entitled to half of everything. Actually, you're not. Remember the prenup your mother insisted I sign before we got married? The one that protects your assets from me? Well, it works both ways, especially when there's evidence of adultery. I could see the moment she remembered. The prenup had been Eileen's idea, designed to protect Karen's inheritance from her first husband, but it also protected my assets from her. Besides, I added, I don't think you'll want this to go to court. Not when I have photos of Liam's service weapon in your motel room, not when I have documentation of your affair, not when the whole town will hear about how you and your daughter have been treating the man who raised her. Ashley was crying now, ugly sobs that might have moved me a week ago. Now they just sounded like manipulation. Where are we supposed to go? Karen asked. I hear Liam has a nice place. Of course, that's assuming he still has a job after the internal affairs investigation. You bastard! Karen whispered. You reported him, didn't you? I reported an unsecured police weapon. What happened after that was just good police work. Karen's phone rang. She glanced at it, and her face crumpled. Aren't you going to answer that? I asked. Might be important. She declined the call, but it rang again immediately. This time she answered. Liam? What's wrong? Her voice was shaky. I couldn't hear his side of the conversation, but I could see Karen's face getting paler with each word. What do you mean suspended? How did they... Oh, God. No, I can't. John's here. We'll talk later. She hung up and stared at me with something approaching hatred. He's been suspended pending investigation. They found evidence that he's been using his position to facilitate an extramarital affair. Someone provided detailed documentation of his activities. That's terrible, I said. I hope he has a good lawyer. This is all your fault. My fault? I didn't make him leave his weapon in a motel room. I didn't make you cheat on your husband. I didn't make Ashley post videos mocking the man who's been her father for 10 years. You all made those choices. I stood up and grabbed my keys. Where are you going? Karen demanded. Out. I suggest you two start making some phone calls. You're going to need somewhere to stay. You can't just kick us out. Actually, I can. This house is in my name. The mortgage is in my name. You have no legal right to be here. What about Ashley? She's still in school. I looked at Ashley, who was still crying but watching me with something like fear now. Ashley made it very clear that I'm not her father, so her living arrangements aren't my responsibility anymore. John, please, Ashley said, her voice small. I didn't mean... You meant every word, and now you get to live with the consequences. I headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Karen, you might want to check your credit cards. I canceled the ones that were linked to my accounts. Wouldn't want you to be embarrassed at the store. I left them there, crying and arguing, and drove to the Blue Tap. I needed a drink and some time to think about my next move, because this was just the beginning. The Blue Tap was crowded for a Friday night, but conversations stopped when I walked in. Word traveled fast in a small town, and apparently, my domestic drama was the evening's entertainment. Barb poured me a beer without being asked, and nodded toward the back corner booth. Might want some privacy tonight. I was halfway through my beer when the door opened and 3 familiar faces walked in. Mike Chen, Dave Rodriguez, and Tommy Webb, my former best friends, guys I'd known since high school. Guys who'd apparently known about Karen's affair and said nothing. They spotted me immediately and came over. Mike slid into the booth across from me, while Dave and Tommy flanked me on either side. Johnny, Mike said carefully, we heard about what happened. Did you now? What exactly did you hear? That you and Karen are having problems. I laughed and took another drink. Problems. That's one way to put it. Dave shifted uncomfortably. Look, man, we wanted to talk to you about how long you've known my wife was cheating on me. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Tommy was the first to crack. We didn't know how to tell you. How about, hey John, your wife is screwing a cop. That would have been a good start. Mike leaned forward. It wasn't that simple. We weren't sure, and we didn't want to cause problems if we were wrong. But you weren't wrong, were you? Dave sighed. No, we weren't wrong. How long? Another uncomfortable silence. How long have you known? A few months, Mike admitted. Maybe longer. 6 months? A year? Since last summer, Tommy said quietly. Last summer. Almost a year. They'd known for almost a year and said nothing while I made a fool of myself. So all those times we hung out, all those barbecues at my house, all those nights drinking beer and talking about life, you all knew my wife was making me look like an idiot. We thought about telling you, Dave said. But what? You decided it was better to let me live in ignorance? We thought maybe it would burn itself out, Mike said. Sometimes these things do. These things, I repeated. You mean affairs. You thought my wife's affair would just burn itself out, and then everything would go back to normal. We were trying to protect you, Tommy said. Protect me? From what? From the truth, Mike said. From getting hurt. I stared at them, these 3 men I'd considered brothers, and felt the last of my old life crumble away. Let me get this straight. You thought lying to me for a year was protecting me? You thought letting me work overtime to pay for family vacations while my wife was screwing around was doing me a favor? John, come on. No. I held up my hand. You come on. You want to know what would have protected me? The truth. 6 months ago. A year ago. Whenever you first found out. What would you have done? Dave asked. Really? If we told you last summer, what would you have done? I would have dealt with it then, instead of wasting another year of my life. You would have divorced her? Maybe. Or maybe I would have tried to fix things, but at least I would have had a choice. Mike was getting defensive now. Look, we're sorry we didn't tell you, but nothing. You made a choice. You chose to protect Karen and Liam instead of me. That's not fair, Tommy protested. Isn't it? You knew what was happening and you let it continue. You came to my house, ate my food, drank my beer, and watched me play the fool. We were your friends, Dave said. We still are. No, you're not. Friends don't do what you did. Friends tell the truth, even when it hurts. I stood up to leave, but Mike grabbed my arm. Where are you going? Home, to pack up the rest of my wife's things. John, don't do anything stupid. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. Like what? Like trusting people who claim to be my friends? He let go. You know what the funny thing is? I said. I actually feel sorry for you guys. You're so afraid of conflict, so afraid of making waves, that you'd rather watch a friend get destroyed than risk an uncomfortable conversation. It wasn't like that, Tommy said. It was exactly like that. And now you get to live with the consequences too. What does that mean? Mike asked. It means you're not welcome at my shop anymore. It means when you need work done on your cars, you'll have to drive to the next town. It means we're done. Dave stood up. You're being unreasonable. Am I? You think I'm being unreasonable for cutting ties with people who betrayed my trust? We didn't betray you, Mike said. We were trying to be good friends. Good friends, I repeated. Right. Well, here's some friendly advice. Next time one of your wives is cheating, I hope your other friends show you the same loyalty you showed me. I left them sitting there and walked to the bar. Barb was waiting with a shot of whiskey. On the house, she said. You look like you need it. I downed the shot and felt it burn all the way down. Did you know they knew? I suspected, but I wasn't sure until tonight. Why didn't you tell me? Because I'm not friends with them. I'm friends with you. And I figured if you needed to know, you'd figure it out eventually. That's the difference between you and them. You trusted me to handle the truth. You're handling it now. I looked around the bar. Half the people there were probably talking about me, speculating about what would happen next. In a town this size, my business was everyone's entertainment. Barb, can I ask you something? Shoot. Do you think I'm being too harsh? She considered the question while wiping down glasses. You want the truth? Always. I think you're being exactly as harsh as you need to be. Sometimes people need to learn that actions have consequences. Your wife, your stepdaughter, your friends, they all made choices. Now they get to live with them. What about forgiveness? Second chances? What about self-respect? Some things can't be forgiven, Johnny. Some betrayals are too deep. I nodded and left money on the bar. Thanks, Barb, for everything. Where are you going now? Home, to finish what I started. The drive home gave me time to think about what I'd lost and what I'd gained. I'd lost a wife, a stepdaughter, and 3 friends. But I'd gained something too. Clarity. For the first time in years, I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. Karen's car was gone when I pulled into the driveway, but Ashley's was still there. I found her in her room, packing clothes into a suitcase. Where's your mother? At Grandma Eileen's, trying to figure out what to do. And you? I'm going with her. She didn't look at me while she talked. Mom says we'll stay there until she can find us an apartment. That's probably for the best. She stopped packing and turned around. John, don't. Whatever you're about to say, don't. I was going to apologize. For which part? The TikTok video, the diary entries, calling me pathetic? Her eyes filled with tears. For all of it. Apologies don't mean anything without change, Ashley. And you're 17 years old. You're not going to change. You don't know that. I know you well enough. You're your mother's daughter. That hit home. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I loved you, I said quietly. For 10 years, I loved you like you were my own daughter. I would have done anything for you. I know. But love isn't enough when it's not returned, and respect isn't optional in a family. She was crying harder now. I do love you. I was just angry. You were honest, maybe for the first time in years. I turned to leave, then stopped at her doorway. Ashley? Yeah? Your real father was a good man. He would have wanted better for you than this. I left her there crying and went to pack Karen's things. It was going to be a long night, but by morning, I'd be free. And freedom, I was learning, was worth more than I'd ever imagined. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in Pete Kowalski's office, signing the final divorce papers. Karen sat across from me, looking like she'd aged 5 years in the past month. "This is really what you want?" she asked one last time. "This is what you chose," I replied. "I'm just making it official." The settlement was everything I'd hoped for. Karen got her personal belongings and her car. I got the house, the business, and my self-respect. The prenup had held up perfectly, especially with the evidence of adultery. "What about Ashley's college fund?" Karen asked. "What about it?" "She's still planning to go to college. Then she better start applying for scholarships, or maybe Liam can help out, assuming he finds another job." Karen's face hardened. "You're really going to punish a 17-year-old girl for making a mistake?" "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just not rewarding bad behavior anymore." Pete cleared his throat. "If we could just finish up here?" We signed the papers in silence. 10 years of marriage, reduced to signatures on legal documents. When it was over, Karen stood up and looked at me one last time. "I hope you're happy, John." "I'm getting there." She left without another word. Pete and I shook hands, and just like that, I was a free man. The drive home took me past the blue tap, where I could see Karen's car parked outside, probably drowning her sorrows and telling anyone who'd listen what a bastard I was. I didn't care anymore. At home, I found Ashley waiting on the front porch. She'd been staying with her grandmother, but apparently had something to say. "Mom told me you finalized the divorce." "That's right." She also told me about the college fund. I unlocked the front door, but didn't invite her in. "What about it?" "You're really not going to help me pay for college?" "Why would I? You made it very clear that I'm not your father. But you've been saving for my education for years." "I was saving for my daughter's education. Since I don't have a daughter anymore, I'll find something else to do with the money." She was quiet for a moment, probably trying to process the reality of her situation. "What if I apologized? Really apologized? What if you did? Would you change your mind?" I looked at this girl I'd raised, this young woman I'd loved like my own child, and felt nothing but sadness. "Ashley, do you know what the worst part of all this was?" She shook her head. "It wasn't your mother's affair. It wasn't even the lying. It was realizing that you never saw me as your father. After 10 years, I was still just the guy who paid the bills." "That's not true." "It is true, and that's okay. But it means we don't have the kind of relationship where forgiveness fixes everything." "So that's it? You're just going to pretend I don't exist?" "I'm going to treat you exactly the way you treated me, like someone who doesn't matter." The words hit her hard, and she started crying again. But these weren't the manipulative tears I'd seen before. These were the tears of someone finally understanding the consequences of their actions. "I was stupid," she said. "I was angry and stupid, and I said things I didn't mean." "You said exactly what you meant. You just didn't think I'd ever find out." "Please, John. You're the only father I've ever really known." "Then you should have treated me like one." I went inside and closed the door, leaving her on the porch. Through the window, I watched her sit there for almost an hour, before finally getting in her car and driving away. That evening, I was having dinner alone when my phone rang. It was Liam Patterson. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "No, we don't. You destroyed my career. You destroyed your own career. I just reported what I saw. You set me up. I documented your mistakes. There's a difference." There was a long pause. "You think you've won, don't you?" "I think I've survived, which is more than I expected a month ago. This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You have no job, no reputation, and no future in this town. Karen has no money, no house, and a daughter who's about to learn what the real world looks like. And I have everything I built, plus the knowledge that I don't owe any of you anything anymore." "You're a cold bastard, Mitchell. I'm a man who got tired of being everyone's doormat." I hung up and blocked his number. Then I poured myself a beer and sat on my back deck, looking out at the yard I'd landscaped and the garden I'd planted. For the first time in months, the house was quiet. No arguments, no drama, no one treating me like I was invisible. Just peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Barb. "How are you holding up?" "Better than expected," I typed back. "Good. You deserve better than what they gave you." "I know. That's why I took it." 3 months later, I ran into Mike Chen at the grocery store. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me, but he came over anyway. "John, how are you doing?" "Great. You?" "Good, good. Listen, I wanted to say, don't. We said everything that needed saying." "Come on, man. We were friends for 20 years. Were, past tense. It doesn't have to be." I looked at him, this man I'd once considered a brother, and felt nothing but indifference. "Yeah, it does. You made a choice, Mike. Live with it." I walked away, leaving him standing there in the cereal aisle. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. 6 months after the divorce, I heard through the town grapevine that Karen and Ashley had moved to Grand Rapids. Karen was working at a call center, and Ashley was attending community college. Liam had left town entirely, supposedly working security somewhere downstate. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, but no sympathy either. They'd made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. As for me, I was thriving. The business was doing better than ever, partly because I was working harder, but mostly because I wasn't distracted by family drama anymore. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just enjoying the company of women who actually appreciated what I brought to the table. 1 year after everything fell apart, I was closing up the shop when Ashley appeared in the doorway. She looked older, more mature, and definitely humbler than the last time I'd seen her. "Hi, John." "Ashley. Can we talk?" I looked at her for a long moment, then nodded toward the office chairs. "I wanted to thank you," she said once we were seated. "For what?" "For teaching me the most important lesson of my life." Which was that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people badly and expect them to keep loving you anyway. I didn't respond, just waited for her to continue. "I know you'll probably never forgive me. I know I destroyed something that can't be fixed, but I wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost." "Do you?" "I lost the best father I ever could have had. I lost someone who would have done anything for me, who loved me unconditionally, who was always there when I needed him. And I threw it all away because I was selfish and stupid and took you for granted." She was crying now, but quietly, with the dignity that comes from genuine remorse. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued. "I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'll spend the rest of my life regretting what I did." I sat there for a moment, looking at this young woman who'd once been my daughter, feeling something I hadn't expected. Peace. "Ashley?" "Yes?" "I forgive you." Her eyes widened in shock. "You do?" "I do, but that doesn't change anything between us." "I know, thank you." She stood up to leave, then turned back one more time. For what it's worth, you were a great dad, the best I could have asked for. After she left, I sat in my shop for another hour, thinking about forgiveness and justice and the difference between the two. I'd forgiven Ashley because holding on to anger was poisoning me, not her. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. Some relationships, once broken, stay broken. That night, I called Barb and told her what had happened. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said. "Finally, completely free." "Good. You've earned it." And I had. I'd earned my freedom by refusing to be a victim, by standing up for myself when no one else would, by choosing self-respect over false peace. They'd wanted to make me the villain in their story. Instead, I'd become the hero of my own.